The year is Universal Century 0087, 8 years after the events of the One-Year War. The Zeon forces have been defeated, and to make sure they never rise again, the Earth Federation creates an elite task group known as the Titans. Unfortunately, the Titans will have their own agenda by becoming corrupt and try to gain control of the Earth Sphere. In response, a space rebel group known as the Anti-Earth Union Group, or AU for short, attempt to stop the Titans. During a mission that would spark a war between the two groups, a 17-year-old prodigy named Gundam-A-Thon hijacks the new prototype Gundam Mark II and fight back against the Titans. After his parents are killed in the incident, Camille would join the AU forces in hopes of crushing the Titans, thus becoming the pilot of the very Gundam he hijacked, while being mentored by Char Aznavour himself, who is now under the name Quattro Bajeena. Considering that Zeta is a sequel, it would naturally carry over the themes and concepts presented in the first series. Although this time around, Zeta actually expands the themes of war and understanding one another much further. A lot more is going on here in Zeta as opposed to the original, and the Zeta that intrigues me the most is that all of the events that happen in Zeta fits so well together, with very little rough edges. The story itself, while a few more episodes longer than the original, is still excellently paced. One of the more controversial aspects of Zeta is the dark tone of the series, as we see characters die left and right throughout the show. It may not be the first anime to give Tomino his infamous kill 'em all reputation, but nonetheless, it was still a shock to the viewers at the time. While it may be okay for today's standards, back in the 80s the thought of characters dying all at once was unspeakable. You may say that all these character deaths are just for shock value, and maybe it's true. However, I say that the death of these characters actually strengthens Zeta Gundam's themes. The characters from the first Gundam series return, but this time most of them play much more minor roles to make way for the development for the new cast. Char is now one of the main characters of the story as opposed to being an antagonist in the first series, and needless to say, his presence was not wasted as he shows how much of a badass he still is. On the other hand, characters like Amuro Ray don't necessarily play a huge part in the series, but still make major contributions to the overall story progression. Now it's time to talk about the new cast, who I got to say really grew on me the more I watched this series. You may hate them initially, but they all progress in a way that makes them become either relatable or likable by the end. Characters that you can really connect to. Camille Badon may be a bit more angsty and aggressive than Amuro was, but he actually had a drive for doing what he did, unlike Amuro. He joined the war effort because of his hatred towards the Titans, not because he was thrown into the mix like Amuro. Throughout the series, Camille would mature in such a way that would make him a memorable protagonist in his own right, and the kind of person you can easily connect to. The Titans make for some of the most ruthless factions in all of Gundam, so there are sympathetic characters that you can relate to like Forum Rosame, Jared Mesa, and Sarah. Overall, the story of Zeta Gundam can be best described as an expansion, taking everything that made the original great and expand it to new heights. Since Zeta was made a few years after the original, it would make sense that the visuals are much better. It's much more dynamic and detailed compared to the original. The battles are also an improvement and make for some memorable moments. The mecha designs are much more complex this time around. The Zeta itself is an awesome, pure 80s design, and I really love the Hyaku Shiki. The series marks a couple of firsts in the franchise. It was the first Gundam series to feature transformable mobile suits, the first series to feature multiple Gundams, and the first series to feature a mid-season upgrade in which a character starts off with one Gundam but gets a stronger Gundam midway through the series. So in terms of art and animation, I thought that Zeta looked great for its time. The music is just as great as the first, having a much more dramatic edge to go along with the dark themes of the series. The two opening themes and the ending theme, while a bit campy, have a nice 80s J-pop tune to them. Naturally, in the Japanese version, all the seiyus from the previous series return to do an excellent job, and they are joined by new talent. Camille is voiced by Tobita Nobuo, who does a great job portraying Camille as an angsty teenager. I really don't care about the dub all that much, mainly because none of the English cast from the original series reprised their roles. But from what I remembered, it was at least tolerable. Zeta Gundam is hailed by many to be the best entry in the franchise and one of the best anime ever made, and I can definitely see why. It took all the elements that made the original great and managed to improve them. Zeta was the series that managed to help skyrocket Gundam into an anime phenomenon. Whether you think Zeta is overrated or not, you can't honestly argue what it did for not just Gundam, but for many sci-fi anime series that would follow. For that reason, I can definitely say that Zeta deserves all the praise it has garnered over the years as a true anime classic. If you can handle the dark nature of the series, then I highly recommend watching it. It's a legendary anime that will be remembered for a long time. Final score, 9.5 out of 10.